Anne Boleyn's execution was noticeably missing on my channel until now. Reason is me, and that is why you hear my voice at the beginning again. If you don't like it, don't worry, it will be just a few sentences. If you missed it, yes, I'm still here. Let me explain. A historian's job is to further our understanding of the past. I have trouble with executions to keep the necessary distance to do that. You can see it in my video about the execution of Catherine Howard. The scaffold scene was rather short. A really good video by a college historian about the execution of Louis XVI showed me another way to do it. Just let the Contemporaries speak. I link his video, go watch it. If you are interested in this as well, it's really worth it. And now let's start, and I will disappear again.
I called on Cromwell and told him that I had purposely avoided visiting him many a time for fear of arousing his royal mistress' suspicions, owing to the reasons he himself had explained to me. I recollected very well his telling me that she would like to see his head off his shoulders. Such a threat, I said, was constantly before my eyes, causing me great care and anxiety. And I sincerely wished him a more gracious mistress than she was, one more grateful for the immense services he, Cromwell, had rendered the king. He ought to take care not to offend or over-irritate her, or else he must renounce all hope of that perfect reconciliation we both were trying to bring about. Some days ago, the king being here in London, and the young Miss Seymour, to whom he is paying court at Greenwich, he sent her a purse full of sovereigns, together with a letter, and that the young damsel, to whom he is paying court, after respectfully kissing the letter, returned it to the messenger without opening it, and then falling on her knees, begged the royal messenger to entreat the king in her name to consider that she was a well-born damsel, the daughter of good and honourable parents, without blame or reproach of any kind. There was no treasure in this world that she valued as much as her honour, and on no account would she lose it, even if she were to die 1,000 deaths. That if the king wished to make her a present of money, she requested him to reserve it for such a time as God would be pleased to send her some advantageous marriage. I am awaiting some certain issue of the affair, which, in my opinion, has come to pass much better than anybody could have believed, to the great disgrace of the concubine, who by the judgment of God has been brought in full daylight from Greenwich to the Tower of London, conducted by the Duke of Norfolk, the two chamberlains of the realm and of the chamber, and only 4 women have been left to her. The report is that it is for adultery, in which she has long continued, with a player on the spinet of her chamber, who has been this morning lodged in the Tower, and Mr. Noyes, the most private and familiar sommelier de course of the king, for not having revealed the matter. The concubine's brother, named Rochefort, has also been lodged in the Tower, but more than 6 hours after the others, and 3 or 4 before his sister. And even if the said crime of adultery had not been discovered, this king, as I have been for some days informed by good authority, had determined to abandon her, for there were witnesses testifying that a marriage past 9 years before had been made and fully consummated between her and the Earl of Northumberland, and the king would have declared himself earlier, but that someone of his council gave him to understand that he could not separate from the concubine without tacitly confirming not only the first marriage, but also, what he most fears, the authority of the Pope. These news are indeed new, but it is still more wonderful to think of the sudden change from yesterday to today, and the manner of the departure from Greenwich to come hither. But I forbear particulars, not to delay the bearer, by whom you will be amply informed.
Sir, your grace's displeasure and my imprisonment are things so strange unto me, as what to write, or what to excuse, I am altogether ignorant. Whereas you sent unto me willing me to confess a truth, and so obtain your favor by such a one, whom you know to be my ancient and professed enemy. I no sooner received the message by him, than I rightly conceived your meaning. And if, as you say, confessing truth indeed may procure my safety, I shall with all willingness and duty perform your command. But let not your grace ever imagine that your poor wife will ever be brought to acknowledge a fault, where not so much as thought thereof proceeded. And to speak a truth, never, Prince, had wife more loyal in all duty, and in all true affection, than you have found in Boleyn, with which name and place could willingly have contented myself, as if God and your grace's pleasure had been so pleased. Neither did I at any time so far forge myself in my exaltation, or received queenship, but that I always looked for such an alteration as now I find. For the ground of my preferment being on no surer foundation than your grace's fancy, the least alteration, I knew, was fit and sufficient to draw that fancy to some other subject. You have chosen me, from a low estate, to be your queen and companion, far beyond my desert or desire. If then you found me worthy of such honor, good your grace, let not any light fancy, or bad counsel of mine enemies, withdraw your princely favor from me. Neither let that stain, that unworthy stain of a disloyal heart towards your good grace, ever cast so foul a blot on your most dutiful wife, and the infant princess your daughter. Try me, good king, but let me have a lawful trial, and let not my sworn enemies sit as my accusers and judges. Yes, let me receive an open trial, for my truth shall fear no open shame. Then shall you see, either mine innocency cleared, your suspicion and conscience satisfied, the ignominy and slander of the world stopped, or my guilt openly declared. So that whatsoever God or you may determine of me, your grace may be freed from an open censure. And mine offense being so lawfully proved, your grace is at liberty, both before God and man, not only to execute worthy punishment on me as an unlawful wife, but to follow your affection already settled on that party, for whose sake I am now as I am, whose name I could some good while since have pointed unto, your grace being not ignorant of my suspicion therein. But if you have already determined of me, and that not only my death, but an infamous slander, must bring you the enjoying of your desired happiness, then I desire of God, that he will pardon your great sin therein, and likewise mine enemies, the instruments thereof, that he will not call you to a strict account for your unprincely and cruel usage of me, at his general judgment seat, where both you and myself must shortly appear, and in whose judgment, I doubt not, whatsoever the world may think of me, mine innocence shall be openly known, and sufficiently cleared. My last and only request shall be, that myself may only bear the burthen of your grace's displeasure, and that it may not touch the innocent souls of those poor gentlemen, who as I understand are likewise in strait imprisonment for my sake. If ever I have found favor in your sight, if ever the name of Anne Boleyn hath been pleasing to your ears, then let me obtain this request. And I will so leave to trouble your grace any further, with mine earnest prayers to the Trinity to have your grace in his good keeping, and to direct you in all your actions, your most loyal and ever faithful wife, and Boleyn, from my doleful prison the Tower, this 6th of May. O death, rock me asleep, bring me to quiet rest, let pass my weary, guiltless ghost, out of my careful breast, toll on, the passage bell, ring out my doleful knell, let thy sound my death tell, death doth draw nigh. There is no remedy, my pains, who can expraise, alas, they are so strong, my dolour will not suffer strength, my life for to prolong.
They were tried within the Tower, and yet the trial was far from being kept secret, for upwards of 2,000 people were present. The concubine and her brother were condemned for treason by all the principal lords of England, and the Duke of Norfolk pronounced sentence. I am told the Earl of Wiltshire was quite as ready to assist at the judgment as he had done at the condemnation of the other four. Neither the whore nor her brother was brought to Westminster like the other criminals. That she was principally charged with was having cohabited with her brother and other accomplices. That there was a promise between her and Nois to marry after the king's death, which it thus appeared they hoped for, and that she had received and given to Nois certain medals, which might be interpreted to mean that she had poisoned the late queen, and intrigued to do the same to the princess. These things she totally denied and gave to each a plausible answer. Yet she confessed she had given money to Weston, as she had often done to other young gentlemen. She was also charged, and her brother likewise, with having laughed at the king and his dress, and that she showed in various ways she did not love the king, but was tired of him. Her brother was charged with having cohabited with her by presumption, because he had once been found a long time with her, and with certain other little follies. To all he replied so well that several of those present wagered 10 to 1 that he would be acquitted, especially as no witnesses were produced against either him or her, as it is usual to do, particularly when the accused denies the charge. I must not omit that among other things charged against him as a crime was, that his sister had told his wife that the king was impotent. This he was not openly charged with, but it was shown him in writing, with a warning not to repeat it, but he immediately declared the matter, in great contempt of Cromwell and some others, saying he would not in this point arouse any suspicion which might prejudice the king's issue. He was also charged with having spread reports which called in question whether his sister's daughter was the king's child, to which he made no reply. They were judged separately and did not see each other. The concubine was condemned first, and having heard the sentence, which was to be burned or beheaded at the king's pleasure, she preserved her composure, saying that she held herself ready to greet death, and that what she regretted most was that the above persons, who were innocent and loyal to the king, were to die for her. She only asked a short time for confession. Her brother, after his condemnation, said that since he must die, he would no longer maintain his innocence, but confessed that he had deserved death. He only begged the king that his debts, which he recounted, might be paid out of his goods. Today Rochford has been beheaded before the Tower, and the 4 others above named, notwithstanding the intercession of the Bishop of Tarbes, the French ambassador resident, and the Sieur de Tinterville, who arrived the day before yesterday, in behalf of one named Weston. The concubine saw them executed from the Tower, to aggravate her grief.
Whereas Anne, late Queen of England, lately our wife, recently attainted and convicted of high treason towards us by her committed and done, and adjudged to death, that is to say, by burning of fire according to the statute, law, and custom of our realm of England, or decapitation at our choice and will, remains in your custody within our tower aforesaid. We, moved by pity, do not wish the same Anne to be committed to be burned by fire. We, however, command that, immediately after receipt of these presents, upon the green within our Tower of London aforesaid, the head of the same Anne shall be caused to be cut off.
We have by your man, the bearer, received your 2 letters and learnt the occurrences with you. You did well to dispatch him to certify us of what has happened about the concubine, and since the case is so manifest, as we suppose, by the divine will, and the king takes it to heart as he ought, we think, as we wrote you in our last letters, that the king will wish to marry again, and having since our said previous letters thought over the marriages therein mentioned between the said king and the Infanta of Portugal, daughter of the Queen of France, our sister, and of Dom Lois of Portugal, our brother-in-law, we have decided that it will be better openly to declare to the said king, in the way that you shall see most fitting, as the affair of the concubine proceeds. And you can learn the king's inclinations from Cromwell and others, that, knowing what has taken place, we have charged you to put before him the said marriages.
Great murmur rose from the crowd. Never had the queen looked so beautiful.
She was wholly habitate in a robe of black damask, made in such guise that the cape, which was white, did fall on the outer side thereof. The cape was a short mantle furred with ermines.
She went to the place of execution with an untroubled countenance. Her face and complexion never were so beautiful. She gracefully addressed the people from the scaffold with a voice somewhat overcome by weakness, but which gathered strength as she went on.
Having written the above the day before yesterday, thought it well to delay the dispatch to inform the Emperor of the execution of the concubine, which was done at 9 o'clock this morning within the Tower, in presence of the Chancellor, Cromwell, and others of the Council, and a great number of the King's subjects, but foreigners were not admitted. It is said that although the bodies and heads of those executed the day before yesterday have been buried, her head will be put upon the bridge, at least for some time. She confessed herself yesterday, and communicated, expecting to be executed, and no person ever showed greater willingness to die. She requested it of those who were to have charge of it, and when the command came to put of the execution till today, she appeared very sorry, praying the captain of the Tower that, for the honour of God, he would beg the king that, since she was in good state and disposed for death, she might be dispatched immediately. The lady who had charge of her has sent to tell me in great secrecy that the concubine, before and after receiving the sacrament, affirmed to her, on the damnation of her soul, that she had never been unfaithful to the king.
Good Christian people, I am come hither to die, according to law, for by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it. I come here only to die, and thus to yield myself humbly to the will of the king, my lord. And if, in my life, I did ever offend the king's grace, surely with my death I do now atone. I come hither to accuse no man, nor to speak anything of that whereof I am accused, as I know full well that aught I say in my defense doth not appertain to you. I pray and beseech you all, good friends, to pray for the life of the king, my sovereign lord and yours, who is one of the best princes on the face of the earth, who has always treated me so well that better could not be. Wherefore I submit to death with good will, humbly asking pardon of all the world. If any person will meddle with my cause, I require them to judge the best. Thus I take my leave of the world, and of you, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me. O Lord, have mercy on me. To God I commend my soul.
The silence was deafening. She was praying loudly and breathing loudly.
These bloody days have broken my heart, my lust, my youth did them depart, and blind desire of estate, who hastes to climb seeks to revert. Of truth, circa regnat on it, the bell tower showed me such sight, that in my head sticks day and night, there did I lean out of a grate, for all favour, glory, or might, that yet circa regnat on it. By proof, I say, there did I learn, which helpeth not defence to yearn eager, of innocency to plead or prate, bear low, therefore, give God the stern, for sure, circa regnat on it. And thus farewell each one in hearty wise, the axe is home, your heads be in the street, the trickling tears doth fall so from my eyes, I scarce may write, my paper is so wet. But what can hope when death hath played his part? Though nature's course will thus lament and moan, leave sobs therefore, and every Christian heart. Pray for the souls of those be dead and gone.
Although the generality of people here are glad of the execution of the said concubine, still a few find fault and grumble at the manner in which the proceedings against her have been conducted, and the condemnation of her and the rest, which is generally thought strange enough. People speak variously about the king, and certainly the slander will not cease when they hear of what passed and is passing between him and his new mistress, Jane Seymour. Already it sounds badly in the ears of the public that the king, after such ignominy and discredit as the concubine has brought on his head, should manifest more joy and pleasure now, since her arrest and trial, than he has ever done on other occasions. For he has daily gone out to dine here and there with ladies, and sometimes has remained with them till after midnight. I hear that on one occasion, returning by the river to Greenwich, the royal barge was actually filled with minstrels and musicians of his chamber, playing on all sorts of instruments or singing, which state of things was by many a one compared to the joy and pleasure a man feels in getting rid of a thin, old, and vicious hack in the hope of getting soon a fine horse to ride, a very peculiarly agreeable task for this king.